Dom, I got a question for you. You're watching a lot of the NHL playoffs? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, and again, like there's certain series that you kind of gravitate to. Like I was really interested, obviously, right or wrong, in Toronto. Just in the yeah, just the because the pressures that are there, and whether it was Edmonton as well. I mean, obviously, Boston. So yeah, the short answer is yes. I've been watching quite a bit.
And I'm still as great as a player as Leon Draisaitl is. I still do not understand how he can't put a little more effort and attention into the defensive side of the game. He's just freaking deplorable at times. It's really, really unfortunate to watch. He's such a fabulous player, and obviously, he's totally emotionally invested in trying to be the best he can be. And I just hope he comes to the epiphany that that we all know Yzerman came to at some point, and Ovechkin to some degree with under Trotz, and helped them win a Stanley Cup. Like, you spend a hell of a lot more of your time without the puck than you do with the puck. And I just, if he was a better defensive player, they might have won that series. He cost them one game almost by himself, even as he was scoring. However,
yeah, and again, and this is just my own personal view on this. And I watched the last game. I really do believe. I'm not sure who's got music on.
That's a national anthem.
That sounded like you were in a montage.
It's Tom. I muted it again.
That sounded like there was going to be this huge Olympic entrance or something to what was going on.
I was just for Dom.
I appreciate that, Tim. I don't feel, and again, this is just as I said, preface it by saying it's my opinion. I don't think they took, by playing those two guys as much as they did, they took everybody else out of the game. It was like they were playing every second shift. And I get it that, they've gotten points and whatever else have you. But I feel, and again, they just, I saw Nugent Hopkins, and there's some of these other guys, I barely saw them on the ice. I saw these guys were going every second shift. And, I think it comes down to, yes, are they going to score goals? Yes, sure. But at the end of the day, it's the team that ultimately, the best team that does it. And I think they got carried away by being okay, we're going to put these two guys together and they'll score us whenever they need to score us goals when we need to score. And I think he just took the rhythm and everything out of everyone else. And again, the argument could be made, they don't have the depth. I don't think you allowed to have the depth. You didn't allow to have your other, more of a consistent attack as opposed to waiting for the power play, right? And McDavid had that one interview in the last game. He got snippy at it, and because they asked him, it was his second even strength goal, and he's like, well, it doesn't matter, a goal's a goal. And they had one power play the last game. And so again, this is just my own thing. Until they figure out how to be able to make more inclusive, to be able to have at least three lines that are able to go and go back to that. And I just I don't see a way that you're able to win. Because I think, to your point, Tim, Draisaitl doesn't, if he's at 70% in the defensive zone, and it's not a big deal to him to be able to compete and whatever else have you, because he's just expected, quote unquote, to score. He becomes a liability. And like you said, it's deplorable the way his attention to detail on the defensive side, right? But
yeah, and to your point exactly, I would love to have a conversation with Todd Woodcroft. He's obviously done a really good job there. When he took over the Oilers, the most dramatic thing that happened was he reduced McDavid and Draisaitl's ice time from 25, 26, 27 minutes down to 21, 22, 23. And now he's gone completely away from that. And they took off like a rocket when that happened. And now he's gone away from that in the old coaching trap. Like, you got to get your best players out there. They're the only ones that can win the game. What we talk about all the time on the developmental level is you got to find a role for the bottom people. I don't know whether they had injuries, but they had 2 or 3 forwards that were playing 3 or 4 minutes a game the last 2 or 3 games. And I totally agree with you, Dom. Like, I would love to hear him speak to that point, like how, why, and does he think that was in any way, shape, or form? And I would love to hear Connor and Leon weigh in on it as well. Did they play too much? Were there 2-minute power plays, and they got penalty killing time, and were they not enough of a team? Basically, 4-line teams have won the Stanley Cup for the last 7, 8, 10 years, and until you become a true 4-line team, you're not going to be successful, I don't think, in this day and age.
Yeah,
Kim,
and maybe it's. Go ahead.
I'd like to comment on that. I don't call what Draisaitl did and the shift length and the play without the puck as cardinal. In other words, it's important, but it's not the kind of thing you should sit for.
I didn't say that.
What? No, I know you didn't. The point I'm trying to make is he did things that were cardinal that cost them. And he took bad penalties. He took reaction penalties. That's something visible, obvious, and minor hockey I'm talking about here now that you have to address. And when I see behavioral things occurring with players and your best players, you've really lost the concept of what it takes to win. So I was more concerned about the penalties he's took, his body language on the ice, and the frustration that was shown, because I'm not worried about his defensive play. I'm worried about his offensive contribution, and I'm not going to address that to the point where we're going to be butting heads all the time. But that's
but for me, Wally, one of the cardinals was lack of effort or awareness back checking. And for me, that's a cardinal.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to be a successful team, if you don't have your best players buying into the fact that they got to back check as hard as everybody else, they got to be aware as everybody else on the back check how to help nullify the rush. Those are the things that are, and just, it's really, really simple. I mean, he's a fabulous player, and he's obviously a great teammate in lots of ways. But it's as simple as we've talked before. Defensively, figure out when you don't have the puck in your own end of the rink, figure out where it might go next and try to help deny one of those options. And if he just thought that way a little bit more, he'd be a hell of a lot better. And I think you can almost say the same about McDavid as well. Like, he's just thinking about sniffing the puck a bit too much in my mind. He needs to think more about, we need to defend first to get the puck, not sniff to get the puck so we can get out of the zone. It's a mindset thing, and it's a hockey sense thing, and eventually I think it's got to get through to them, I would think or hope.
I got a question here. The age-old sayings are the best defense is a good offense, and the best offense is a good defense. And that's sort of the crux of the fine line of coaching in terms of how you focus on that element and in getting everybody to buy into both sides of the puck, respecting their gifts. And I think that's an art. Now, listen, the talk on Yzerman changing his role, Tim, I had a question, and I've got the same question for anybody else. I don't know that, other than Dom and yourself, Tim, you've experienced the NHL enough. How many other players in the NHL do you know that have changed their roles to extend their careers?
Well, I don't think it was a career extension thing for either of them so much as I want to win a championship kind of thing. And what are we missing as a team? What am I missing as a player? And how can I make a more positive contribution to a winning effort? I think that's where it sort of comes from, Wally, as much as anything. And um, I'm sounding really critical of Draisaitl. He's one of the, and I don't mean to be in a big way, but I really think he's got a whole nother level to get to as a player, being a complete player. And Yzerman is a real good example of that. And Ovechkin, I don't watch him enough to know if he's really a better defensive player, but that's what the talk was around the league. That he sort of, Trotz feels like he sort of got him to toe the line a bit better when he was there, and they won a cup. And it's and I mean, it's just important to play the game in a complete way with as many players as you can. And it's so important to have your absolute best players. If they're going to be playing, 22, 25 minutes a game, you need them playing a complete game. So you don't score 2 and give up 3. That doesn't help you, obviously.
I just think they play too much.
Yeah.
Like I think like I'm looking at their time on ice right now in the final game. They're 25 minutes. Draisaitl's 24 minutes and 44 seconds. Like I just think that's it's too much. And you take the rhythm out of for me. And again, this isn't rocket science. And I'm sure you guys have both played this way. Like certain lines set up. Like you have a line that has offensive zone time, and then you have a change, brings another line in, and you build momentum, and then it ends up being quote unquote the third line that ends up paying off because you've got that team stuck in their end, right? It's like I feel like they just eliminate having other guys involved. Like and I'm looking at ice times. Like Nugent Hopkins plays he plays 18 minutes. So like that to me is the right amount of time to be able to play the right way, to be able to be responsible on the defensive end. Because I don't think it's a want on Draisaitl. I think it's just like the physiology behind it, where you're not at your 80-90%. Like it's either you're 90% rested and you're able to do certain things on both sides of the puck. When that drops off a little bit, you're not able to be as good as you are on the defense side of the puck because you're like, for lack of it, like you're tired, or you're fatigued, and I mean they're all elitely trained athletes, but I just think that they're just not able to keep up with when they come out with Riley and Carlson and whoever else out there, and they get stuck out there against them, and they're on their own end, and now they're just trying to get the puck out to get to the next shift. Like I think that to me was evident, right? Like and you look with Edmonton, like they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 forwards that played under 15 minutes, right? So I've played those minutes. It's tough to stay in the game and to have a rhythm and to be able to be a part of that. And that was the overall sense that I got with that. And that's the thing that I that really stuck out to me. They weren't a team. They were basically waiting for those two guys to score. And if the other guys, like, and you saw it even when they were celebrating, like those other lines scored, like guys were like over the moon excited but in a different type of way that they scored, because it was like, oh my God, someone else actually scored a goal other than these other two guys that were involved, right? And so to me, it was almost like two separate teams. And then you look at the interviews after the games, like Draisaitl said, we wasted a year. Like it's almost like I did everything I could. Like I was, but like to me, it's that's where, as a coach, that's where, you control the ice time, you control how much, and I get it. The pressure to play those guys as much as you could is enormous, because everybody's like, oh, these guys are the best. They're setting the record for goals, they're setting the record for this and for that. Well, you're out in the second round, fellas, right? So obviously the recipe isn't the right one, and it's not like it's the first year that they've kind of gone at that. That's where I'm at. Like, and I keep going back to it. Like, you're not going to win with two lines, and that's basically what they played, right? And so that to me is the thing that stands out.
Here's what my point on that. The business of hockey is winning. And I've always measured this in female hockey, Tim, with if I saw two players play penalty kill and power play, I said, you're in trouble. That affects minutes. If you have the best offensive players killing penalties at the most critical times, whenever, then you are taking away ice time from people capable of playing defensively without the puck. You add TV timeouts to that, you're giving recovery time to your best players. And Carla McLeod brought this point up with me with her Czechia team. She said when they had the Worlds, they have TV timeouts, and it cut back on her ice time. And people weren't happy, and she understood that, but she addressed it. And you're talking about going through a whole season, going into playoffs, trying to win games, the standings. Boy, you're almost better off without the two best players in the league and leading scorers, because you can manage the bench easier. So the art now becomes, how do you coach everyone to be the best they can be for their team? I judged Toronto. I thought shot blocking by their two best players, Matthews and Marner, they were blocking shots. They were laying their bodies out there. They wanted to play in both hands. I also, I saw them penalty killing a lot. And I just wondered about the wear and tear of that to their offensive contribution, and how when you build a team, if you can create that mentality of just creating and balancing the ice time to feel valued. And I think in minor hockey, it's critical. In minor hockey, I'm talking junior and below. Major, junior, and below. And even college, and for myself, even the national team. So that you don't win with the best players, you win with the best team has always been my line. And I think that's what we're sort of talking about here. And Tim, in all your years of coaching female hockey, have you seen any female player change their role in a significant way to stay on the team for another year or extend their career?
Well, I know I had that discussion, and Wick was kind of asked to do that the last year or two she played in some way, but I'm not sure how far it actually got. But again, it's, I guess I wanted to respond because I know we sort of respectfully disagree on this, Wally, but I think your best players have to be good penalty killers, but I agree they shouldn't be first ones up all the time doing a lot of the lifting there, but they need to be penalty killers. And it's obviously ideal if you've got sort of 4 to 6, like 2 or 3 pairs of people you really deeply trust penalty killing, and they do the bulk of the work there. But I think it's important to be able to keep your best players in the game in those situations where you get 2 or 3 penalties in a row. And again, I'm not disagreeing with the overall point that probably actually Marner and Matthews and McDavid and Draisaitl did too much penalty killing in the playoffs for both teams' own good. You got to manage those minutes a lot better. And really that's what we're talking about is, spreading the workload out, but those players have to be able to get out there penalty killing to keep them intimately in the flow of the game. But anyway, that's just my own perspective too.
I want to bring the point on Haley and wanting to continue to play. I really felt she could have contributed and continued to play if she accepted a different role, took on a leadership role, sort of a mother hen role with the team, no longer the lead player with the team or the power play go-to person, which I don't think she was at the time. But I really advocated for that. But in the end, I felt the coaching staff has to know how to do that. It's a sensitive area in terms of making the player accept and appreciate and buy into their new role for the sake of the team without hurting the team. So in the end, I felt that the best decision was made, but it's a very difficult thing to change a role. And I'm going back now a long way to the most significant role change that I've ever seen in hockey that extended her career. The seventh defenseman at the Nagano Olympics was Cassie Campbell. And when she tried out in 2002, I was coaching her at the Oval, and I told her, if you want to make the team, you've got to make it as a forward. She made the team as a forward, and I believe played in another 2 Olympics. So she was able to change positions, and the leadership role and her temperament went along with whatever she had to do to continue to play and influence. She was able to do. So I just wanted to bring those names up on the female side because I have no idea of the egos of players and the egos of teammates relative to getting everybody to really respect each other to the point where if the coach makes a decision and it's in keeping with the philosophy of a team, you can live with it. You can live with losing because you've agreed with that.
Probably, Wally, the best example of that on the female side, in my mind, is right in front of us right now. Jamie Lee Rattray, Patty Kazmaier winner, I think, premier offensive player in the NCAA and for her whole career, and now she's a plug in to different roles, different situations, playing the fourth line, sit out a game, be the 13th forward. She might be the best example of that in either the men's or the women's game, and couldn't be happier for somebody like Jamie Lee. She's such a fantastic person. In lots of ways, it's not surprising that she's been able to do that, but she is for sure, in my mind, the best example of that. 13 forward at Worlds and jumps in there and scores big goals, critical goals, plays big minutes. And it's a fantastic tool to have as a coach, to have somebody like that can play up and down your forward lines and slot in and be the work player on the top line or an offensive player on a bottom six line. It's a great tool to have.
Kirk Muller comes to mind for me. He was, obviously, I think he was a part. I'm pretty sure he was that 93 or 14 Montreal Canadian team that had won, and he was scoring all those overtime goals. I remember watching that, and then I remember playing against him. He was in Dallas, and I was on the fourth line, and he was out there on the fourth line role, and he was, like come playoff time, he was the old man line, I think they called it. Dave Reed, him, and might have been Scrudlin, might have been the other guy. But again, a guy that recognized ended his career winning more of a defensive role. And, again, like it's no coincidence that he's very well liked on the coaching side as well, because he's kind of been it. different roles over the course of his career and had to adapt and everything else. So that's one that comes to mind for me.
And I think the other guy that comes to mind, I'm just looking him up here. Not Thomas Steen, but what's his son's name? Who played 1,000 games and
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know who you're talking. Yeah,
took on the fourth line role basically in St. Louis. I mean, he was 1,000 game player in the NHL. Oh man, we were just talking about him yesterday with Peter Elander, Alex Steen. So he would be another one, Wally. Totally, I'm just looking up his stats, but totally changed his role, embraced a sort of checking role in his last couple of years. I mean, he was, better than half a point game guy through his, he's a 30, while he was a 20 plus goal scorer 3 or 4 times and basically took on a checking role the last couple of years in St. Louis and, helped him.
Yeah.
So he's
and
another.
I remember guys referencing him like being a big part of it, right? Like it's say to him, like him taking that fourth line role and like you have to be responsible for a fourth line. You've got to be able to put him out. And you talk about having a team that wins. St. Louis was a team that won, and to be able to have that depth and that, and you can, I'm sure, just as I say, looking at his stats, like he had 10 points in 20 games, but played a significant role. Like those are big. I mean, 4 of those goals, I'm sure you look like those are big goals from your fourth line that but to be able to take that on, I mean, that's the difference between why teams win and why teams don't, right? Like who's willing to accept not a lesser but a different role to be able to,
no less important, maybe lesser ice time wise and everything, but no less important. And it's where the humility and being a humble player who just loves the game and respects the game and enjoys playing the game. It's a big part of that. When you get your ego, let your ego lead the way, you just can't do that kind of thing. A lot of respect for those kind of guys and